Loneliness rarely arrives the way we imagine it will. It does not always come with tears. It does not always come with obvious pain. Sometimes it arrives as calm. You wake up one morning and realize you no longer feel pulled toward people the way you used to. Conversations feel repetitive. Noise feels heavier. Laughter feels distant, not because it is fake, but because it no longer reaches you. You start needing less explanation, less approval, less company. And that is when the question begins to form quietly in your mind. Why do I feel alone, even when nothing is technically wrong? Stoicism does not rush to fix this feeling. It does not label loneliness as weakness. It does not tell you to distract yourself or seek comfort immediately. Instead, it asks you to sit with the feeling and listen. Because loneliness is not always a wound. Sometimes, it is a signal that your inner world is changing faster than your outer world can keep up with. And change, real change, is isolating. 1. You feel alone because you have outgrown who you used to be. Growth is rarely dramatic. It is subtle, quiet, unannounced. You don't wake up transformed. You simply wake up less interested in things that once consumed you. The jokes you laughed at no longer land. The drama you once entertained now feels draining. The arguments that once excited you now feel pointless. And slowly, the gap appears. You did not leave people behind intentionally. You did not decide to become distant. You simply grew in a direction they did not. Stoicism teaches that nature is indifferent to comfort. Trees grow toward light, even if it means breaking through stone. Rivers carve new paths, even if the land resists. Growth does not ask permission. And when you grow, relationships based on convenience, habit, or shared distraction begin to loosen their grip. Loneliness enters not because you are empty, but because your container has expanded. Your thoughts are heavier now. Your questions are deeper. Your silence is fuller, and many people are not equipped to meet you there. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. The Stoics understood that not everyone belongs in every phase of your life. Some people are companions of circumstance, not of character. You feel alone because you are no longer who you were, and the world around you has not adjusted yet. This loneliness is not a loss. It is the space required for your next version to fully form. You feel alone because you stopped performing. There was a time when you adjusted yourself constantly. You spoke in ways that would be accepted. You softened your truth to avoid discomfort. You became agreeable to remain included. And one day, without making a dramatic decision, you stopped. You stopped explaining yourself so much. You stopped shrinking your thoughts. You stopped chasing reactions. And when the performance ended, the audience slowly disappeared. Stoicism teaches that external validation is a fragile foundation. Anything built on applause collapses the moment the noise stops. When you no longer seek approval, you also lose the illusion of constant connection. People are drawn to energy that feeds them. When you stop feeding expectations, fewer people stay. This is where loneliness often feels sharpest, not because people left, but because the roles ended. You are no longer playing the version of yourself that kept rooms comfortable, and comfort, when removed, reveals truth. You feel alone because you are learning how to exist without witnesses, and that skill, quiet self-sufficiency, is rare. The Stoics believed that the strongest person is not the one surrounded by people, but the one who remains steady when no one is watching. Loneliness is the silence left behind when authenticity replaces performance. You feel alone because you see too clearly now. Awareness changes everything. Once your eyes open, you cannot unsee. You begin noticing how many relationships are built on convenience. Relations are rituals rather than connections. How often people speak, not to understand, but to avoid silence. Stoicism sharpens perception. It strips away fantasy and replaces it with clarity, and clarity isolates. You begin to see how often people avoid themselves, how rarely honesty is welcomed, how uncomfortable depth makes those who live on the surface. This awareness does not make you superior. It makes you incompatible with illusion. Loneliness forms when you refuse to pretend not to notice. The Stoics believe that truth is heavy and not everyone is willing to carry it. You feel alone because you are no longer asleep, and awakening is always lonely at first. You feel alone because you are learning emotional self-sufficiency. Most people bond through dependence, shared pain, shared reassurance, shared emotional leaning. But Stoicism trains you to reduce unnecessary dependence, not because people are bad, but because stability should not rely on others. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. You learn to process emotions internally. You learn to endure without collapsing outward. And as you did, something shifted. You no longer needed people the way you once did. That shift can feel like loss, but it is actually strength-forming. When you stop leaning heavily, fewer people feel essential. This is not coldness. It is grounding. Stoicism does not reject connection. It rejects dependency disguised as connection. You feel alone because you are learning how to stand. You feel alone because life is preparing you. Stoics believed hardship is not random. It is instructive. Loneliness is one of life's most effective teachers. Before leadership, solitude. Before wisdom, silence. Before depth, isolation. Noise leaves no room for reflection. When life removes people, it often makes space for understanding. Loneliness forces you to confront your own thoughts without escape. And once you can endure that, you become difficult to manipulate. You are being trained, not punished. You feel alone because you stopped running from yourself. Most people stay busy to avoid introspection. You slowed down. You asked, "Who am I without distraction? What do I actually believe? What do I want when no one is watching?" And when you stopped running, loneliness caught up not as an enemy, but as a mirror. Stoicism teaches that facing oneself is the highest form of courage. Few dare. You feel alone because you chose honesty over escape. You feel alone because you are becoming who you were meant to be. Loneliness does not last forever, but it does its work thoroughly. It removes excess. It strengthens inner structure. It clarifies direction. Stoicism does not promise companionship, it promises coherence. When who you are aligns with how you live, loneliness loses its threat. You are never abandoned. You are being shaped. You feel alone, not because you are broken. You feel alone because you are no longer willing to live unconsciously. Stoicism teaches that solitude is not emptiness, it is refinement. And those who endure it emerge with something rare, a self that cannot be shaken by absence, a mind that does not beg for noise, a presence that does not need permission. You may walk alone for now, but you are walking toward yourself. And that is the bravest direction anyone can choose. This channel is for people who walk alone. But think deeply. If that's you, you're welcome here.